Welcome to a Drop Tent Media production.
The Porcupine with Adam Nutter.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Porcupine. It's we're here. We're doing it live, which is cool. We're gonna start doing more live of these because I can now from home without being lazy. So I don't have to drive to the studio and do this. This is great. So since we're live, stand-up shows coming up. The only one I really want to plug right now is November 20th at the Pop-In, Chalfont, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philly. We have two shows, a 7 and 9:30 show coming out. droptent.com/events for those tickets. They sell out every month. Every month I get DMs being like, can I get two tickets? I mean, no, they sold out. Get your tickets now. droptent.com/events. Two solid shows, great lineup. That's all for me. Guys, I'm super psyched to have on my guest for the evening. You guys all know him. You guys all love him. Please give a warm welcome via stream to Mr. Spike Cohen. What's up, man?
Hey, man. How are you doing? It's good to see you.
Good. Same, man. We met officially for the first time in PA, in the middle of nowhere, PA, because I'm the board rep for Bucks County. So we were there for our meeting, and you were like right next door doing some fundraiser. And when I met you, I forgot the word sunscreen. I remember that. Because you were like, cool tattoos. And I was like,
oh,
yeah,
yes.
And I was like, thanks, man. I was like, the only bummer is for when it's sunny out, I have to, the stuff that you rub on yourself for the big fiery ball in the sky.
I gave you like a good 10 seconds because for the first 5 seconds, I thought he must be talking about something other than sunscreen. Or sunblock or whatever you want to call it. And then as you continue to describe this thing that you needed when you're in the sun, I increasingly realized that you were having moments that I often have where you just forget a very basic word that you're looking for. So I let it go on for another 5 seconds because I wanted you to have that moment for yourself. But once I realized that you were approaching a point of flailing, then I stepped in and said, sunscreen? Yes, sunscreen. Thank you.
Dude, I was like, say sunscreen, Spike, please. Help me out.
Say whatever the word is. Yeah, no, and don't feel bad because that happens to me all the time. The difference is it happens to me on like cable news or something like that, where I'll be like and they're like, Constitution. I'm like, Constitution! It's against the Constitution. No, that was great meeting you, man. Yeah, and your palate that most people call their bodies was very impressive.
Oh, these?
Yeah.
I'm actually going tomorrow to add more to this trash heap you see before you.
Nice.
Just covering up garbage, man. That's all you gotta do. You gotta add on, and it makes it look
garbage
pretty.
to get the old garbage. No, that makes sense.
That's
It's like
how
there's
it
a
works.
sediment layer of bad tattoos that you cover over with increasingly better tattoos.
You get it. It's like the good ink cancels out the bad past memory ink.
Yes.
It just recycles it out.
I'm the opposite, where I'm so OCD that I know that even if I got I always use the excuse, oh, I'm Jewish, I can't have a tattoo, which is technically true, but we can't eat pork either, and I eat pork most of my life.
Of course.
The real reason is because I know myself, and I know that I would spend months figuring out the perfect tattoo and finding the perfect person to do it, and they would do it perfectly. And the very second they stopped, I would look in the mirror and say, I can't believe I chose this. And then I would spend the rest of my life saying, well, the bright side is one day I'll die, and then I won't have to see this anymore. And so I've never gotten one. And case in point, when I was like 18 or 19, I wanted to get across my back this giant field of marijuana plants with a giant dollar sign shining over it like the sun. And in retrospect, that might have been a bit much. And thankfully I didn't have the money for it then, because I would definitely now feel I would not put on sunscreen because I would hope that it would burn off slowly over time.
That's a terrible tattoo idea. That would be one of the worst. And I've seen people with their own names tattooed on them. I've seen people with like the vagina tattoo on their armpit. You know, where like the legs
Wow.
are like. You ever see that one? So
No,
some
but
guy
that's
will raise so a guy will raise his arm and he has like a lady's leg up here, like on his bicep, and like going down his rib a
no,
little bit.
I can envision what we're doing here. Yeah, no, that does sound marginally better than my idea.
It is. That's what I'm saying. It's crazy. What does it say about you?
Well, I was 18. I was also very, very high. So there's some layers there, but it does say it does. I mean, I won't lie that does say something about my decision-making ability. Now, keep in mind, I didn't do it. I didn't
Fair.
do it.
No,
But I didn't do it because I was broke. So there's actually that too.
Good though, because I'm from Staten Island, wearing the hat right now. You know,
Yep.
I'm repping Staten Island. My first tattoo on my 18th birthday, like every good Staten Islander, I think it's by law you have to get a tribal band tattooed over here. I think that's if you're an Italian male from Staten Island at 18, that's your birthright. You have to get a tribal band tattoo right here. From what tribe? The dump? I don't know.
Yeah, as is the Italian tradition. Speaking of Staten Island, since a beautiful segue there, I'm going to be in New York. Since this is live, I'm going to be in New York. All of this. Why is this happening? Hold on a second. I'm trying to figure out why my. Okay, well, I don't know why that's happening. Give me 1 second. I'm having a weird. Yeah, I don't know why my camera's doing that. Anyway, whatever. Because we are live, I can promote the event that I'm doing. I'm going to be in New York for 10 days, including in Staten Island on the Spike New York, Spike Cohen 2021 New York tour. So we're doing at least one event in Staten Island on the 10th, a farewell dinner. If you go to if you go to spikecohen.com, it's got the information there. Or if you go to any of my social media, I just put up all the links. But I'm doing at least one event and possibly another event in Staten Island as well. We're doing a couple of NYC events. So if you live in Staten Island, come out and show me your tribal band and I'll make fun of it.
I was a little small. Where in Staten Island are you going to be? I couldn't see on the.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I said that.
That's fair. That's a fair question.
Wait, no, it's not on there. I can tell you though, if you give me 1 second.
Sure.
This is beauty of live stuff, is I can just like do stuff while we're live. I'm going to be in Staten Island, which is my favorite island-based borough of New York.
So more than Manhattan, because Manhattan's technically an island.
Well, it's an entire island. I should say whole island. It's a whole island. It's at the Danoy restaurant in Staten Island. And if you go to my website or if you go to any of the links in my social media, I've got them up there. You can register to do it. It's a fundraiser dinner at the Danoy restaurant, the famous Danoy restaurant in beautiful Staten Island, New York, on the 10th at 6:30. Again, possible other pop-up events. So follow me everywhere on social media and stay tuned. And we may have some more Staten Island events. My favorite whole island-based borough in New York City.
So what do you actually do? You just like what's the point of going to Staten Island? Like what's the tour for? Like, is actually for
why are you going to Staten Island? So we're doing a 10-day New York tour starting in New York City. I'm doing an in-person thing at Fox Business with Kennedy in studio. And then from there, we're going across the state. I'm going to be speaking at some universities. I'm going to be taking part in Syracuse, New York. The Libertarian Party of New York is having the Empire State Freedom Summit. It's a 3-day event. I'll be taking part in that. I'm the keynote speaker at that. We're just doing a bunch of events. Like once we started planning out stuff for New York, it made sense to make it into like a fortnight. I'm going to be there for like 11 days. So it made sense. All these other things started popping up. I'm going to be doing a shooting range event out in Bergen, which is near Rochester, possibly doing something in Buffalo, possibly doing something in Albany. It just sort of like took on legs, and every New York libertarian kind of reached out and was like, hey, do a thing with me. Hey, do a thing with me. So pretty much we're traveling the whole damn state. It's been going on for a year now where libertarians in New York have been like, are you coming back to New York? And I'm like, yeah, of course. I'm just waiting until one of the coldest months of the year to do it.
Yeah,
so
yeah. I hate the Northeast. And when I moved to Pennsylvania, I was like, oh, it's going to be colder here. It's not. It was for sure colder in Staten Island. Like, definitely. Which just blows my mind.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yep. Listen, I'm upset at the weather here in Myrtle Beach right now because it's in the 60s. So you can imagine what I'm looking forward to, where we're going to reach highs as high as 52, and as low as
It's rough.
No, I'm definitely looking for like I'm mad that I don't live in South Florida. First of all, I'm a retired Jew. Okay. and by that I mean I'm a Jew who's retired. I haven't retired from Judaism.
Right.
But
how would you retire from Judaism? You have to hang up your yarmulke, or you do like a ceremonial
blood
something.
in, blood out. Blood in, blood out. You gotta die.
You're
born a Jew, you die a Jew.
There's no way out, no converting.
There's no converting. It's blood in, blood out. But as a retired Jew, I will not have completed my character arc until I move to South Florida. And I'm told that the Tampa Bay area, it's Southwest Florida, they'll count that. So at this point, it's like I already naturally should be because I'm a sun Jew. There are sun Jews and there are snow Jews.
Okay.
I am decidedly a sun Jew.
Okay.
Like I said, once it dips below 70, I'm finished. I don't want to be
that's a Florida Jew, right?
I'm a Florida Jew.
Yeah.
If anything, I'm looking forward to the end of the Castro regime, mostly so I can move there. I look forward to eventually being able to work my way like all the way to Cuba. So, because I mean, frankly, that was probably one of the biggest tragedies for the Jewish people was when Fidel took over and we had to leave Cuba. So on behalf of my fellow Cuban people, we are looking forward to getting back there. In the meantime, I will do South Florida. Anyway, so the point of all that is that coming to New York for 10 days, this isn't just I can try to stay warm for a weekend. I hope everyone understands how much I love them, that I'm going up there in what is going to be I know everyone up there is like, oh, it's unseasonably warm. It stays above freezing at night. I'm going to be miserable.
You would be
absolutely miserable. So I just want everyone to know that I'm sacrificing in a major way as a Sun Jew. And I just hope everyone appreciates that.
Yeah, Staten Island won't because they're garbage people. But the rest of New York might, but they're also garbage people. Just different type of garbage people. So we're like you said, Jews are you born in blood in, blood out. We're dump in, dump out for Staten Islanders.
Wow.
Like that's what we're known for, dude. Like everyone's like, sometimes like in my stand-up, like in my comedy, I'll be like, I'm from Staten Island, and people just laugh at just me saying I'm from Staten Island.
You're from there.
And I'm like, hey, fuck you, man. You don't get to laugh at that. I get to. That's the joke I'm building up to.
That's our word. Yeah, that's our word.
But like, we're only known for like two things: the dump, which isn't even there anymore. But like, it used to be like, oh, you can see it from space, and fucking Wu-Tang, what's up? So we got, some things that are cool. But overall, Staten Island's a joke. Like, no one cares about us. Larry Sharp, a mutual friend of ours, I'm sure, is running for governor of New York again. And I think I'm doing like a stand-up fundraiser thing for them. And like, we should do in Staten Island. I was like, okay. I was like, cool. Let's do it in Staten Island. They're super supportive.
No, listen, I have a soft spot in my place for Staten Island because it was the first campaign stop I had in New York. And it was very, very warm reception there. Everyone was very happy to see me. We had a really great event there. And most of them then followed us into Manhattan, where we did an event at Zuccotti Park, I think it's called. It's
that was where Occupy was.
Yeah. Yes, it was where Occupy was. And so I've got a soft spot in my heart for Staten Island, but I get it. I get it.
Speaking of that, what was your path into like liberty? Like what got you Staten Island? Yes, physically Staten Island.
I did. I watched a documentary about Staten Island and I said central planning has failed. No,
just burn it down.
Just start. This is wrong. Also, Stalinism and the Holocaust and all that. But Staten Island, there's something really bad happening here.
That's third. So, it's Stalinism, Holocaust, and then
Staten Island. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, per capita. So no, I was a neoconservative for many years. I was one of those people. I was 19 when 9/11 happened. I fully believed that in what the government and corporate media were telling me, that, the terrorists just hated us because of our freedoms. It wasn't, decades of imperial war policy or any of that. It was, women in booty shorts or whatever. Like, I'm not even, they never even really explained what freedom they were upset about. And meanwhile, here I am as a erstwhile conservative Republican who's mad about all the stuff the government makes me do. But then I'll turn around, I'm like, I'm just so damn free and they hate me for it. It's like, what, free to what? So anyway, I bought into the nonsense. We needed to spread democracy by installing puppet dictators, and we needed to show our peaceful ways by bombing and murdering, hundreds of thousands of people. It's I can jokingly say this now, but I literally believed it as strongly and passionately as I advocate for liberty now. Was as strongly and passionately that I, as thankfully a much younger and less effectual person back then, advocated for neoconservative policy. And it was these really annoying libertarians, people like Matt Kibbe, Dr. Ron Paul, who else? I guess Thomas Sowell, though he didn't really talk a lot about the wars. I think he actually was pro-war. And others who would kind of challenge me from a conservative standpoint or from a constitutionalist standpoint on just how screwed up these policies were and how they would never accomplish what they said they would, and how they were all just excuses to enrich the military industrial complex and have greater control over us, and all the stuff I say now. And I was just so annoyed that these people wanted the terrorists to win so bad. And over time, every prediction they made came true. Everything they said would happen happened. Everything they said just made more and more sense. And I was angrier and angrier about it until I realized that the reason I was angry was because I was wrong and they were right. And I thought, well, there's a really simple fix to that. I can stop being wrong. And that made me really re-examine the things that I thought were true. And that led me all the way to being an anarcho-capitalist. So I went from neocon and kind of worked my way over the course of a year or two, a few years, into being a Super Saiyan libertarian. And
the Goku of libertarians, some would say.
Yes, the Goku of libertarians, and or at least the Vegeta of libertarians. And I don't know if that's a good thing, actually, but so I and that led me on that. And then when I, a really long story short, when I was diagnosed with MS, and had to kind of rethink what my priorities were in life, I had reached a point at that point where my business had been successful enough where I didn't have to work to be able to make ends meet anymore. And that allowed me to kind of re-examine things. And I thought, we're all going to not be here fairly soon in a relative blink of an eye. And what matters is the world we've left behind. And that got me going full speed into fighting to help set the world free.
It's weird because we have a slightly similar gateway to things, because again, from Staten Island, 9/11, I was a sophomore in high school. We're only 5 years difference in age. So I was like 13, 14 years old. And we saw the smoke from my fucking school window. It's like we had classmates whose parents died. It really hit us home. Especially
of course.
A whole community of people who died from Staten Island. There was a lot, not a lot, but a good chunk of people from Staten Island.
It was right there. It was right there.
And so that was directly impacted us. And of course, a 14-year-old coming from Staten Island, which is it's the only conservative borough in all of New York City.
Right.
So you grow up around city workers and fucking cops and firemen and sanitation workers who are like, yo, fuck these people. And you're like, yeah, get them. And then you're just 14 and you're just angry because all these people die in your backyard. So you're like, oh, well, I want to punish. Not again, you don't realize literally all the bullshit behind 9/11 that you do now.
Of course.
So I'm talking as a 14-year-old, but so you're like, oh, so when they once went to Afghanistan, I was like, all right, great. Let's get this fucker, let's get this guy. And then I remember this so vividly. It was 2003. And then I was like, when did Iraq, the first Tomahawk missile, was like March or May of 2003, right? It was like early 2003, I think.
It was sometime spring. I think it was April of 2003, March or April of 2003. Yeah.
Right. I was like a junior going into my senior year. And I remember my dad and I just staring at the TV because it was live, and I remember the green night vision and just green night, tomahawk after tomahawk after tomahawk going into Iraq. And I remember my dad just solemnly was like, we're officially going to war for a while. And I didn't get what that meant at the time. I was
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, we're going to fuck these. Because I'm thinking, like, we're the American military. These guys have sticks, essentially, compared to what we have. We're going to walk through them. What do you mean we're going to be in a war for a while? It's
Kick
going to be like
their
literally
ass.
like fucking
Yeah.
4 months. And then, like, my dad's like, no, you don't understand. He's like, no, physically, we're going to fuck him up. He's like, that's not, that's not what I'm talking about. He's like, I'm talking about, like, everything. And then he's like explaining to me. But still, as a 15, 16, whatever I was at the time, 17-year-old, you're like, I still don't really get it. You know, so it's interesting that we both kind of had the same thing, and then you're still angry at that time, and you understand, like, oh, Iraq has nothing to do with anything, and there are no WMDs, and you're just like, we'll start picking all these fucks because they're the ones who did this, and like you still don't get it until you're like, I wasn't until I was like, again, my 2008. Well, I was like the second wave of Ron Paul guys myself, but like it was still like 2007, 8. I was like, wait a minute. I think this is bullshit.
It was right around 08, 09. And it was with Ron Paul, who I had hated since like 03, 02, 03, when he first started with his anti-war thing. And meanwhile, he hadn't started with it. He started with it with Iraq.
Right.
And I just hated him. And then when he ran for president in 08, I'm like, you don't have a pig's shot in hell or whatever. You know, and so I'm listening to him, and the more he said things, the more I realized I was having an angry, visceral reaction to the fact that I didn't really have a good response other than, well, but what about the people who died? You're not respecting those who died on 9/11, to which he said, no, they're not respecting the people who died on 9/11 because they're not acknowledging why it happened and thereby figuring out how to make sure it never happens again. They're actually doing the things that are going to ensure future 9/11s and future terror attacks and future hatred against us and people dying overseas for a lost cause that's actually making things worse. And not to mention all the people that live there that are dying. You know, I mean, for every American that died, hundreds of Afghans and Iraqis and Syrians and now Yemenis and Libyans and so forth died. And, you know, it took a while for me to realize you're mad because you're wrong.
Right.
And you've been so trained to hate these people. And now you're realizing they were right. Well, then you should be mad at the people that lied to you. And it wasn't like it took years or whatever, but it was a few weeks where I was really had to grapple with, like, why are you so pissed off watching Ron Paul spank Rudy Giuliani while everyone boos him? And you're, you know, booing him too and yelling at your TV. Why are you so mad? Everything he's saying is right. And, you know, by 09, 2010, it really did sink in. And I did hope that Barack Obama would end the wars. And then once I realized he wasn't going, I never was going to vote Democrat. The one thing I can say is I've never been a Democrat. And I can, for all my flaws, I've never been a Democrat. And you know, I hoped he would end the wars. I thought it was great that, you know, we had demonstrated that the country was ready to elect a black man. I thought that was a good thing too. But the bigger thing was, I hope, well, if he ends the wars, then that might be a good thing. And then he didn't, and he just expanded the drone wars. And, you know, then he was that was also when I was realizing that, you know, our immigration policy was bad and actually against what the founders wanted, and certainly wasn't respectful of our rights, and gave them, it was actually the original, before the war on terror and all the excuses for a police state that created, there was the war on migration and all the excuses for the police state that created. And then when I saw he was going to be a deporter in chief, he still has the record for the most deportations of any president. I realized, I'm like, it's not going to happen with either of these parties. And it was interesting because I kind of went full on to the, you know, I kind of skipped the Libertarian Party, especially after Bill Weld. I wasn't
oh my God.
that. And I liked Kerry, but I thought, well, but, you know, maybe just electoral politics in general is just a waste of time, and I don't have a problem that anyone else is doing it, but I think we need to just be, you know, agorist and opt out of the system. And in theory, that's a good idea. And we certainly should be engaging in counter economics and, you know, doing things like the blockchain and DeFi and all of that. That's all great stuff. But the reality is you don't have to be interested in politics. The people in charge will continue to impose themselves on you. And there needs to be at least some kind of if only a defensive action happening on the electoral front, to try to fight against it, at least while things like the blockchain and cryptocurrency and DeFi can continue to grow legs and, you know, work to make government obsolete. In the meantime, we have to fight the system that we have. And that's really been my focus since then.
You said something interesting before about like, oh, people got mad because they were wrong and they stayed mad. I think it's a typical human being thing where it's like, oh, I don't want to again admit that I was duped or whatever, so you just double down your anger, but then like, okay, so like you start to feel stupid when like, you're like, so all the hijackers were Saudi Arabian. Then why do we attack Afghanistan and Iraq? and then my favorite is they go, hey, we found Muhammad what's his fucking name?
Muhammad Atta.
Yeah, he found his passport. It was like slightly crisp, and I was like, so you're telling me this plane was eviscerated upon impact with all the people, luggage, everything, papers, literally floors of it, but his passport was found slightly singed in the rubble.
Yep.
Fuck you.
Also, in the midst of the Tora Bora bombing campaign to try to get bin Laden, we couldn't find bin Laden. We eviscerated the entire community there, but we found a VHS, which had bin Laden saying, hi, everybody. Well, it wasn't quite like that. It was him having a candid conversation with people saying, I'd like to just record me talking about how proud I am that we did 9/11. Folks. Now, I'm not a 9/11 conspiracy theorist to the extent that I think that the people that they say did it more than likely did it. And I don't know. I haven't done all the due diligence on things like Building 7 or any of that stuff. But honestly, even if we take the government's word for who did it and their motivations behind who did it, or if we take the motivations of who we are told were the hijackers and the people responsible, Al-Qaeda, we were attacked because of decades of foreign policy imperialism and mass murder and appointing of dictators, starting with Operation Ajax in the 1950s when Eisenhower deposed a democratically elected government and reinstalled a brutal, oppressive Shah in order to maintain oil links in Iran and a domination of the Gulf, the Persian Gulf over the Saudis or the Soviets. Even if you take their official stance of what happened and the official stance of the group that they said did it as to why they did it, that's more than enough for me to oppose U.S. foreign policy. And if you dive into, if it had been Bush did 9/11 or Bush worked with, the Israelis to do 9/11, if that's true, that just makes it even more damning. But even if it's true, exactly what they said, even if they really did find Muhammad Atta's passport, even if they really did find a VHS, VHS are like the most easily destroyable things ever. They're filled with this highly flammable tape. But again, let's just say that's what happened. It still is damning on U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah, just the whole 9/11 thing just sits weird with me. Especially when you start to look into it. I don't even believe in they had explosives in the cords I just find it hard to believe that a bunch of cave dwellers pulled off the greatest everything doesn't add up to them doing it. I just especially this is fun too. Don't forget the Taliban was like, hey, we'll give you bin Laden. Please don't come here. They offered him up.
Oh, gosh. I started reminding everyone of that when Biden pulled finally. One thing I will say about Joe Biden, he did it in the crappiest way possible, and he made it as terrible, but he left. And it looks like we really are leaving. They even did that stupid drone bombing of that family, but they left. And it looks like they actually are leaving. And I'll give him that. If nothing else, I agree with that. I actually left. Now, with that said, everyone was going, yeah, but you got to remember, even though we did it wrong, we had to go in there. Well, no, we didn't. The Taliban's opening offer was to say, in the midst of being threatened, the Taliban, who's not scared of anything, clearly, the Taliban's opening offer was, if you can present us with evidence that is compelling evidence that bin Laden did this and Al-Qaeda did this, we will happily hand him over to a third-party Muslim nation for him to undergo trial for it. That was their opening offer. Imagine if we had said, hey, listen, we will give you evidence and we'll go through an extradition process, but you're handing him over to us. And hey, how'd you like to have a new bridge? And how'd you like to have a trade deal? And how'd you like to have this and have that? Right? Like, no, I don't like giving away taxpayer money, but it would have cost
We
probably for
wouldn't have
less than
lost
100
thousands of
million
American
bucks.
lives over it. I'll tell you that much.
And, thousands of Americans' lives, hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
Afghan lives, tens of trillions or
Mhm.
trillions of dollars, which once you factor in inflation and the debt cost, because most of that was run up in debt, you're looking at something like $28.5 trillion that will end up having been spent on this country. For probably about 100 million, maybe a couple $100 million and some negotiating, we would have gotten bin Laden. Remember that Mullah Omar described bin Laden as a chicken bone that was stuck in his throat that he could neither swallow nor spit out. If we had given him enough of a reason, enough of a pretext to hand him over to us, they would have absolutely signed off on that. It might have taken some finagling, but with a little bit of finessing there, Mullah Omar would have been more than happy to say, "Oh, you twisted my arm, Americans. Here you go. Here's bin Laden." And at that point, bin Laden had maybe a couple dozen adherents. The Taliban could have easily whisked him up or killed him in the process and handed him or his body over to the U.S. government. And Bush knew that, which is why they didn't negotiate. They said, hand him over, and days later, they were dropping bombs. They
Right.
didn't even give a good faith effort to negotiate because they didn't want to negotiate.
It was never about that. It really reminds me of World
No.
War II when Japan was like, "Yo, we're done," and we're like, "Cool, we're gonna drop 2 nukes on you, though. We don't care." Remember, Japan unconditionally surrendered in
Yep.
May, and we were
Yep.
like, "Cool, wait for August, though. We're dropping some shit on you."
Yep.
It's like,
Yep.
and then again, like, you talk to all these fucking, like, not even like super like conservative people, but anybody who's a little more right leaning and like, go our military. You try to bring up World War II to them, they're like, "Oh, you're wrong." I go, "Have you read a book? Have you read anything? Have you ever read about like how we didn't have to drop the bomb? We could have starved them out. We could have done so many things. We bombed all their fucking their salinary stations. They had nothing to go off of. We could have just waited.
Yep.
We didn't have to murder thousands of innocent civilians."
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
when you say that, like, yeah, we had to do it because they wouldn't have given up. They gave up. That's what I'm saying. They actually, but no one really fucking reads a fucking book. It's the same thing about like economics or anything. It's like, I'm dumb. I'm a dumb person, but at least I fucking read like basic, like, we've all read the Henry Hazlitt's and Thomas Sowell's and stuff like that. But that gives me light years ahead of the average person, which I feel like who's never opened a book about anything. But they'll be the first. Like, okay, I was at the dog park today, and I was just listening to just a bunch of very left leaning people just spout just lies, and it's not even their. It is their fault, but like they're just regurgitating what they hear in CNN, and I'm just sitting there like rocking like fucking Jack Torrance and trying like trying to not to ruin my dog park experience. You know what I'm saying? Because they're like, and they weren't even like super Joe Biden people, but they were like, COVID this and the fucking and I'm like, fuck you, you're so fucking wrong. And they're like, well, the shortages because of COVID. I'm like, the shortages because of government mandates and all that shit, and it has nothing to do with people that like it's. But if you start saying that, they think you're crazy, and it's like, it's not worth it.
There are people who legitimately believe that the reason, that was slowly opening in front of you or behind you. I was watching it, and I was waiting for someone to come in. I'm like, is someone about to tell you dinner's ready? Or
I thought it was my dog sneaking in.
Yeah, the dog's like, you said dog park. Are we? It's kind of late, right? But are we going to the?
I'll make a second effort to go.
To go because no one's there now. So there are people walking around right now who are otherwise very smart, at least on the surface, who legitimately believe that the reason we're having supply chain problems is that so many people drop dead of COVID that there's just no one to work these factories.
Right.
And that, like, of that age, like the people that are working in factory just drop dead left and right, and there's just no one there to be able to be able to do it. And when you try to explain how central planning, how the US government and every major government on earth just sat there and played red light, green light with the economy for months, and that we're going to be feeling, even if they completely stopped all other stuff from now moving forward, we're going to continue feeling the effects of that for years because of the structural rigidity that's built into this overly regulated global economy that we have. And they're like, no, it's because of the COVID. And it's like, no, it's not because like, and I even asked someone, they were told, because I've heard that it was because of COVID. And I said, what does that mean? Well, it happened because of COVID. What does that actually mean? How did COVID make this happen? And they're like, well, it's a pandemic. I'm like, I understand the words COVID and pandemic. I'm
Yeah.
asking you, how did the pandemic cause this? And they're like, it was a worldwide pandemic. I'm like, I know everything you're saying and I'm not disputing it. I'm asking you how it caused this.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, they said, I'm not sure. And I said, do you think that this many people drop dead? And they're like, no. And I said, do you think that it's that there's that many people in the hospital? And they said, no. And I said, is it possible that it was government's response to the pandemic that led to this? Yeah, I guess it could be. So then it's not COVID's fault; it's the government's fault. But you have when all you hear, and that's really just a symptom of people that lean on the left, and really centrists too at this point. Centrists and people leaning on the left, not the far leftist,
Right. Well, they're
anarcho-communist
gone,
types.
dude. They're
But
far gone.
yeah, the centrists and the people that lean left are basically just like you said, they're regurgitating what they hear from mainstream corporate media and pop culture. But the Republicans at this point are regurgitating what they're hearing from right-leaning media and right-leaning pop culture. So it's really, they're kind of mirrors of each other. And it's like that that meme of the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other.
Yeah.
And they're both, and in this case, they're pointing at each other like, you're just regurgitating your preferred media's talking points. No, you're just regurgitating. And it's like, no, actually, you both are, and you're being played against each other in order to benefit the people on both sides of that are fleecing you and future generations that aren't born yet. Going back to the military thing,
Yes.
Republican conservatism is the interesting belief that every federal agency is at best misguided and inept and bloated, and at worst harmful and destructive and wasteful, except for the biggest one.
You're right.
All of the rest of them are terrible, except the Pentagon.
Right.
That one, and I guess the intelligence committee, although now they don't
Right.
like the intelligence community, right?
Right.
Because of what happened with Trump. But, it's like the single biggest entity in the federal government, which anyone who's ever worked for it as a contractor or as a enlisted person can tell you is incredibly wasteful and stupid. Only that one works.
Yeah. No, it's crazy because, like, again, my father-in-law is an accountant, and we were talking about the Fed. We're like, the Fed's printing money. And I was like, yeah, it's crazy. It's a private bank just lending us money. And he's like, well, it's controlled by the government. I went, no, it's not. And he's like, well, it's run by them. I went, I'm not doing this with you at dinner, but no, it's not. I'm done with the conversation already. But like, that's what I'm saying. So like, the guy who works with money doesn't even know, like, the Fed is a privately owned bank. So how many people do you think really know that?
No, they don't. And it's what's wild is, I mean, it's private to the extent that it operates outside of government and decides its own policy. Now, obviously, it's the governors, the main governor is appointed by the president, and then that governor appoints the other guy. Like, I mean, there is some overlap there with government. It's I guess more like a public-private partnership than like a truly completely private entity. It is not run by the government.
Right, that's what I'm saying, though. It's not like some government entity. It's like, we're just a bank. It's like, nah, dude. Where do we get the money from? And then all this printing, which I believe hyperinflation for sure is going to hit, right? Or it's hitting, like, as we speak now. And then the gas prices. I saw a chart, like, gas this time last year was like $2.49. Now it's like $3.80 or what the fuck it is. Like, it's wild. And then people be like, well, it's not Biden's fault. I go, well, yeah, it is. Like, it's definitely partly his fault. It's when you're having all these mandates and all these fucking restrictions on things that are, and then you're printing money, like, who else are you gonna blame? Apple? Like, no, it's fucking the government. Like, of course it is.
Yeah. So it's as much Biden's fault as anyone else, but honestly, it's more Biden's fault for what he did as a senator than it is for anything he's done as president, right? So when people are like, well, it's not because of anything Biden's done in the last 7 months. Well, actually, yeah, I mean, he certainly has, yes, the patient was already dying, but he did pull the plug. But also, he's the one he's one of the main reasons why the patient was dying in the first place, right? So I mean, this is not, the beauty of being a libertarian is, we don't try to sit here and explain how Donald Trump was innocent here. Like we don't try to explain how Republicans were, the 4 years of Republicans being in charge, that, they were good and it was only the Democrats. And we certainly don't have to try to explain how it's just the Republicans and everything the Democrats are doing is great. We can sit there and say, no, it's the whole system. Like this is a basically a uniparty that really exists just to fleece the people. That's what the most disgusting thing about all of this is, Adam. We focus a lot on the tyranny. We focus a lot on the murder. We focus a lot on all the terrible things that they do, and this attempt to segregate people again and to create a two-tiered class of society. And those are all important things to talk about. I think what we often forget is that the reason all of this is being done isn't because of some, not that it would make it better, but it's not being done because of some kind of ideological belief that this is the best way to do things. And it's not because I'm not even sure there's this global cabal that's trying to, do the Satanism or whatever. This is for the most base of reasons. It's to enrich themselves and the people that put them in office. And again, it's not that the motive would make it better, because the same bad things are happening regardless, whether they're misguided or evil. And I do think many of the people in government are just inept and misguided. But I do believe that they are being, basically, they're being led by their nose every bit as much as the rest of us are by these very, very powerful multinational corporations and cronies who know that they can just create chaos or make chaos worse through government, and then create structural rigidities that cause crisis while making sure they don't have any competition. And then when all else fails, they just have trillions of fake notes printed out and handed off to them, and we all get stuck with the bill for it. And the bill never comes due for them because they just stick it on us. And if they can keep us divided against each other and hateful of each other and attacking each other and blaming each other, instead of taking that half a step back and just looking at all of this dispassionately for 5 minutes and realizing this is all a giant con game. We're all being fleeced. And if we recognize that, then we can begin the process of realizing very quickly who are the bad guys here and what is the motive behind this and how do we stop it. And that's what's incumbent upon us as libertarians to do, is to meet people where they are and the things we already agree on, even if it's just the vaccine mandates. Even if it's just police brutality, even if it's just criminal justice reform or the war on drugs or the Second Amendment or mask mandates or whatever that thing is, if we meet people where they are and we demonstrate to them that we agree with them on this and that we understand their concerns and that we share their concerns, then we can start the process. Having built that rapport, working together on that, we can begin the process of explaining how we got here, not just on that, but on everything, and demonstrating our answers to actually fixing this, identifying the bad guys, identifying the problems, and explaining actual solutions, not just kick out the bad guys and put in the good guys, which is what Democrats and Republicans constantly say, but the actual systemic reasons why this is happening. And we're the only ones that are equipped to do that because we're the only ones telling the truth.
Yeah. The problem is too, I also feel like we're like the only group left mostly with common sense. Like the last 5 years, common sense just stopped being a thing. Like the whole mask thing. I could vape through my fucking mask. And you're telling me that COVID particles are bigger or small? You're saying that they're smaller than vape particles, but if vape's going through with these, and then so I'm at a restaurant, ready? No COVID. Now I have it.
Yeah, now you have COVID.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
it just, and then my, did you see that video today for the Don Lemon in Florida? Please tell me you saw that. Obviously one of the biggest, fucking Florida's evil. DeSantis is stupid. Mask up. Yeah. Him and his husband were down there completely in Florida, just completely chilling, no mask. Yeah. And then they got called out. Some lady was like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like calling them out, and they got up and just walked away. And I'm like, "Good, fucking, you should harass these motherfuckers."
Do
everywhere
that.
They don't hit them. Don't hit them. Don't hit them.
No. Don't hurt people. But expose them.
Just expose their shit. And like that's the thing too, is like, stop. When I say stop playing nice, again, I don't mean like go evil and I mean like call them out, like make them feel like shit. I don't care if they're in public. Make them, because what they're doing to us is actual evil. The fact, like, that's what I'm saying. Like this is a true evil that's going on. Like, people legitimately be like, you can't work, you can't run a business, mask your child, give your child a shot, like all this shit. And we're supposed to be like, does not say fuck you to these people because it's rude. Like, fuck that. Like, tell them to go eat dicks. Like, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever. Just get the point across. They are not wanted. Like, they're evil. And what they're doing is just spreading more lies and evil for their own benefit. They don't give a shit. Not one leader has followed a fucking rule of their own. And the fact that still half this country doesn't see that, that's what scares me. It's like, fine, you know what? Like, don't listen to me. Fuck Adam Nutter. I'm just a dumb comic, right? I don't know shit. Okay. Go look at Gavin Newsom. Go look at Nancy Pelosi. Go look at Joe Biden. Go look at Merkel. Go look at the European scumbags. Go look at everybody else. It's like, and then people are like, well, they always give him they make excuses for him. Always. They always make excuses for why they can't do it, or they don't have to, and we do. Like, the people, not even the politicians. Like, what was that? That DC politician, when they caught her at like some party without a mask. She was like, "I was just
San Francisco, London breed,
London breed vibe." I was like, "Oh, cool." Did COVID know that? I guess COVID felt the vibe too, and it just didn't touch you because you were feeling the vibe.
Keep in mind, Tony Tone is an incredible band, and if I were there, I'd be feeling the vibe or the spirit or whatever she said too.
Get back to my safety.
The reality is, when she said that, I was actually glad she just flat out said it. I'm going to do whatever I want. I was enjoying myself. Great. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Stop using the police to enforce something that you yourself ignored the very first time you wanted to. Because here's the important thing, Adam. We already knew that politicians believe that they're above the law, right? Like, we already knew that they think the laws are for the little people and they do whatever they want. This is the more important part. If they thought for a second that the orders that they're telling us we have to obey are necessary to protect ourselves and others, then they would either obey them even if they weren't the law. They would either do that even if it wasn't the law, because who wants to get sick if you can avoid it by just putting on a mask or, whatever else, or not, eating indoors or whatever thing they say not to do when they themselves do. Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, London Breed, Mike DeWine, all of Gretchen Whitmer. She went to Florida too. And when they asked her, she went, "Hey, it's a really good pizza place I went to." Okay, great. Can we go out for pizza now? It's either that they recognize that their orders are BS and don't actually do anything to help public safety, or they do think it is, and they're such sociopaths that they don't care if they spread the disease or get sick. And I don't believe that. I don't believe they're psychopaths. I don't believe they're trying to get sick. It's the first one. They know it's bullshit. They know that it's a bunch of garbage. And that's why it's important to call them out, not just to expose them as hypocrites, but to expose them as liars, that they don't believe it. When Gavin Newsom is sitting there in the restaurant with George Lopez after he was already caught going to a restaurant disobeying his own lockdown orders and did it again, he's showing that he doesn't think this is actually necessary. Now, let's talk about the mask for a second. I believe personally that if everyone wore masks to the actual standard that like a surgeon would wear a mask, and also wears like a mask like an N95, I think that you would see a substantial reduction in the spread of COVID. The way most people wear masks and the type of mask they are wearing isn't doing a damn thing to stop the spread of COVID. And kids are filthy. You give a kid a bunch of kids masks, they're going to trade them. Like, if anything, you're going to help spread the disease. Like, that doesn't work for kids, and honestly, it doesn't work for most adults. And when people keep talking about these surgical masks do not stop or slow the spread of the disease. That's not why they wear them in surgery. Right. They wear them because they typically are mouth breathing because of the high stress environment, and they don't want to get spittle on their patient. But if they're sick, the patient's going to get sick. Right. Like, that doesn't do that. Dude. You could see a small, if everyone wore them and had made sure they were over their nose at all times and that their hands were always clean. You see people touching the mask and their hands are filthy, and then they take it off, and this thing that supposedly is filled with biohazards that they've been protected from, and they throw it on the floor and now it's all over the, like, that's not working. that doesn't actually do anything, and they don't have any studies to show it did it. Again, if you feel like you should wear a mask, then you should wear a
Do
mask.
it.
If you feel more comfortable doing it, do it. And if a business said, I'd rather everyone in here wear a mask, that stuff doesn't bother me. Government telling everyone you have to wear a
Right.
mask, we know what ends up happening. I thought I smelled weed turns into I thought I didn't see you wearing a mask.
Right.
Okay. The same people we talked to people on the left. You're complaining about selective enforcement. You just gave them the ultimate thing to selectively enforce.
Because if as long as it fits their agenda, they don't give a shit. That's why. But also go back to the surgical mask thing. It's funny because people on the left will be like, doctors wear them in surgery. I go, they are in the most sterile environment. That is literally the last piece of the puzzle, you fucking dummy.
And it doesn't do what they say it does.
Right.
Also, they're typically not even wearing. So I've talked to some surgeons who have said we don't usually wear surgical masks anymore. We wear N95 masks because even a surgical mask, if you sneeze or something, some of that's coming out. So that's not even so even before COVID and stuff, a lot of doctors were wearing either an N95 mask or a surgical mask and like a face shield or something like that, because it's not even all that effective in stopping projectile from coming from what is it that they particulates or whatever. And certainly when it comes to the virus itself, it's not. It says it on the box. It says that it's not going to stop the spread of COVID.
Right.
Might there be some marginal reduction if everyone wore surgical masks correctly? Probably, but so much so that that the average person who doesn't even know why they're wearing it or how it works? No. In fact, if anything, I go to airports a lot. I've flown 164 flights this year, separate individual segments.
Yeah.
And I've done like 40 trips this year. And I have noticed this weird dynamic, especially in the airport. When people are wearing masks, they believe that they have a force field on. And so now they stand really close to each other and they scream at each other because they can't see each other's mouths. So it's harder to understand. It is incredible how much louder something has to be if you can't see them talking and make that visual connection to what they're saying. So now I will watch people who are sitting there yelling to each other this far apart where you can see the air coming out, you can see the mask moving while they're talking because they're yelling so loud. And if those two people screaming at each other don't think they're swapping spit, I don't know what to tell them. Like it would have been so much safer for them to be 5-6 feet apart talking like normal human beings. It would have been so much safer than for them to be standing like, what? I said that my flight is late. Like that's so much less safe than, literally what two normal human beings would do, standing 4, 3, 4, 5, 6 feet apart, talking at normal volume. That would be way more like, I don't know what's going on with your door is excited and I don't know what to tell you, but that would be way safer for people to just have a reasonable, I'm not a fan of being like this thing where people get real close face talkers and stuff. I've never liked that COVID gives me an excuse to stay 3 feet away from people because I've never liked that, but it would be so much safer for people to just have a little bit of distance between them than to be constantly, hey, how are you doing?
You're on camera, so you can say hi, Steph. She's
so
like, no.
It would be way safer for people to just be talking normally without a mask on a few feet apart than right on each other like I see so often in these crowded situations. It doesn't do a thing to slow the spread of COVID.
No, I totally agree. It's it's like what's the, I guess my question is, we could wrap it up here, is like, when do you think all this shit stops? Like all the mandates, or like, or like, does it really take us physically stopping it, like as a group of people being like, or just eventually cycles itself out and we just get back to via local rule and law and stuff? Like, what's the outcome?
This is our normal until we say it's not anymore.
That's what I'm saying.
We're not going back to the olden times for two reasons. Number one, because they can. This is now something most of us have become comfortable with. So there is no such thing as this is normal now. And number two, COVID's not going away. This is not a temporary measure for a temporary pandemic. COVID waves are as a permanent part of our life as cold and flu season are. Until we reach a technological point where scientists can edit our genes so that we become imperceptible to viruses like coronaviruses, these vaccines aren't going to stop COVID. Just like the flu shot doesn't stop the flu. At best, it will keep you from getting seriously sick. As the mutations continue to mutate, that will become less effective over time. This is our reality, and we simply have to decide what we're willing to do. What it's going to take is enough of us just saying, no, we're not going to comply with this. And it's not half of us or even a third of us. If 5 to 10% of us reliably said, no, I'm not going to comply. And that means, no, I'm not going to comply with your vaccine mandates. No, I'm not going to comply with your lockdowns. And no, I'm not going to comply with your vaccine mandates either. Not necessarily meaning I'm not going to get vaccinated, but I'm not going to prove I'm vaccinated to go into your business. I'll either go to another business or I will come in and refuse to do so. It's going to take that. And the reason is because government enforcers make up less than 1% of the population, which means they rely on at least 99% of the population just going with it. And the second that you start seeing even 0.5%, in Australia, it's only about 0.5% to 1% of the population that's actually actively resisting. And they're already in a crisis trying to fight. The police are already in a crisis trying to fight against it. If 3, 5, 6% of the population just refuse to comply, it becomes functionally impossible to stop them. So that's really where we're headed. We are headed to, we're either going to have we're going to have continued compliance, and it's going to get worse. This is our new baseline. They're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, or we're going to have mass non-compliance. And mass non-compliance, even 5%, 3, 5%, hopefully more of the population just saying, no, I'm not going to comply. That's enough for there to be pushback. We're already seeing this now. It's more and more employers are saying, we're not going to enforce this vaccine mandate. The government will have to do it themselves. And if enough of that happens, the vaccine mandate goes away.
Right.
And that's because of people that are, Southwest, not being able to fly people for a weekend. And the threat of that was enough to make Delta say, "No, we're not enforcing it."
Right, I don't want to lose money, millions of dollars.
Yeah. You're gonna have to. So it's going to take mass non-compliance. Mass non-compliance will make not just this, but the rest of it go away. If enough of us refuse to comply, there is no such thing as government power. It's illusory. There is no such thing. There's what we're willing to tolerate. And if enough of us say, and it doesn't have to be physical, it doesn't have to be violent revolution or any of that. It just, I'm not going to comply. And if enough of us do that, then we can win this.
Dude, well, let's fucking do that, everybody. Everybody go listen to Spike. Spike, where can everybody find you, dude? And your social, anything you got coming up? I know you already plugged the New York tour, but anything else you got coming up? Please, everybody.
Yes, come see me in your beautiful state of New York and Staten Island, Adam's favorite borough, and mine as well. I'm doing a 10-day tour through New York. I know that's very small letters. So if you go to my social media, you can find out all the details about my I Spike New York tour. Or I Heart Spike New York. It's a heart with my face. So I Spike Love New York. I don't know what you want to call it. But my New York tour. On my social media, I'm Spike Cohen. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube. And you can find me on TikTok now for the kids. The kids love TikTok, and I'm on TikTok. You can go to spikecohen.com, see all my events. See what I got going on, and I'd love to meet you in person. If you'd like to come out to one of my things. You can come out and say hi and ask me your questions. I'm happy to answer them. And then I also have 2 shows, My Fellow Americans and The Muddied Waters of Freedom. And both of those are on Muddied Waters Media. And you can find Muddied Waters Media on all social media platforms, on all podcasting platforms. And you can also find every episode on muddiedwatersmedia.com. Thank you. Again, Staten Island, stand up.
Going out.
Staten Island, Long Island. I'm going to be in Long Island.
Long Island. We don't talk about Long Island.
Long Island. I know to say that correctly. I live in Myrtle Beach, which is new Long Island. Syracuse, Farmingdale, Garden City, New York City, Bergen, Winona. Winona?
Don't know.
Wanianta. I'm going to be in a few different places. Come out and see me. I might be adding some events in Buffalo, Albany, and rural upstate, but we shall see. And come on out. And thank you for having me on, man.
Dude, Spike, thank you so much for doing it. I got to get you on again down the road for sure. We'll definitely do this again.
I'd be happy to do that.
All right, everybody. This has been the Porcupine. Peace.
Thanks for listening. Find Adam on social media, Twitter and IG @AdamNutter, or Facebook and TikTok @AdamNutterComedy. And for podcasts and merch, check out www.droptent.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.